Hello, YouTube. Last year I sat down with Troy Fullerton, the drummer of Severed Savior, a band I've listened to for many years. I was able to interview him on my Twitch channel live, and here are some of the clips from that interview. I hope you guys enjoy.
Took working through, like grade school band where they didn't have any electric guitar, any percussion, anything like that. Getting saddled with another instrument for a couple of years. Getting to junior high, realizing still no guitar, still no percussion. Then eventually giving up on it and saying, screw it. I'm not going to be in school band. I'm just going to buy a guitar, learn how to play. Fast forward through sucking at guitar for a couple of years and spending more time jamming with my friends on his drum kit and him playing my guitar than me playing the guitar and him playing drums. And one day after a, like epic 14-year-old jam session, we were like, damn, you're really good at guitar. And he's like, yeah, man, you're better at the drums than I am. It's like, oh, well, shit, maybe we should switch. Like, yeah, I'll trade you my drums for your guitar and your amp. It's like, deal. So
I've
So
never
that's
heard
when
of
I
that.
yeah, that's when I technically became a drummer, and yeah, and I haven't really mastered anything else since.
Right. So
So
I'm really intrigued by that because I mean most musicians, I'm sure you've experienced too, where like there's a lot of musicians that, especially guitar players, where they're jealous of us. They're like, I wanted to be a drummer, but I either couldn't afford it or I couldn't play it. You know, they couldn't get the feet or whatever. You know, and so they're like, I fuck it, I just went to guitar. So it's very interesting that you wanted to play guitar first and then you went to drums. I'm very intrigued by that.
well, to date myself a little bit, I guess. This was all happening in like the mid '80s, and
Yeah, because how old are
uh,
you?
45,
45.
46 in a couple months. Yeah,
Fuck, I wouldn't have guessed that. I knew you were older than me, then not that much older than me.
I've
You
been, it's like a blessing and a curse of like a baby face. When I was younger, everybody's always thought I was younger than I am, which sucked for the first 35 years because I was still getting carded if I didn't have a beard or a goatee or something.
totally.
Um, but then it's starting to work to my benefit now because now I look younger than I am and I'm happy about it.
Yeah. And all the ladies are like, "Man, who's this guy?" that's that's
Not
how
so
what
much
that's
that,
what they
but
say. They say men age more graceful and all that. So now
right.
you're in that point where you're in your prime, you know?
That's what I keep telling myself when I'm trying to get out of bed in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, yeah.
Robert says 46 is the new 30.
I mean, I mean, it really is, dude. Especially when people are, like you fucking play like a 30-year-old, like so. It's fucking awesome that you're fucking kicking ass. That it
Oh,
inspires
thank
me
you.
because I'm 32 and I feel like shit all the time from drumming. I do, the drumming I do. It hurts me, and so I worry
It's
about
physical.
10, 15 years down the road what it's going to do to me, so it's good to see, you know guys like you, guys like fucking Gene Hoglan that are a million years old kicking ass still.
Right.
So like, yeah.
Yeah.
So you
I've
started with
been,
guitar and then you went to, oh
yep.
no, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, feeling your age kind of thing. I've, finding perspective, right? Like I hear guys your age talking about getting more difficult to play death metal stuff. And like I was watching Andrew Sigma Caldera on one of his streams a couple months back before they went on tour, and he was like, "Oh man, I'm getting old. I just turned 32. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." And I was like, "Damn it!" It's like, "Shut up, you got it." And then on the other hand, you look at guys like Gene and Gene Hoglan, and you're like, I can still play what I'm playing today in another 10 years from now. 15 years from now,
Yeah.
if I can somehow manage to stay at that level, that starts becoming a pretty awesome feat. You know,
It
I can
is.
still play Severed Savior when I'm 55. I'm going to be pretty stoked on that. Like,
That's going to be a hard
I'm doing
flex.
pretty good.
That's doing really good, dude. Like, and it's definitely not impossible because look at all the guys that, look at all the, guys and gals that they're, 50, 60, 70 years old and they're gym rats, and they're in better shape than most people, and kicking ass, better more than 20-year-olds, So it's not impossible by any means. It's just all about taking care of the mind, taking care of the body. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A few years ago now, I was at the gym one like Sunday morning, sitting in the sauna, and guy came in, started chatting with me, get to talking, and to find out he's 60 years old, and I was like, I don't know, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I was like 40, 42, something like that, and he looked to me physically. I mean, his face looked a little older, but his body, he was like a ripped, like 35-year-old. I was like, holy shit. Like, you're in better shape than I've ever been, and you're 60 years old. I'm like, how? How? Like, oh, I've just, I exercised my whole life, eat clean, blah, blah, blah. I was like, damn it. I love pizza though. And
Hey, it's the same thing as just like playing music, People are like, "Oh, how do you drum like that?" It's like I've just been doing it that long. It's the same as taking
yeah,
care of yourself, I guess.
practice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's go back. You started with guitar and then you switched to drums at like 14, you said? And when was it when you started guitar again?
Yes. Um. So yeah, I gave up on playing the saxophone, which is what I played in school band. Got a guitar somewhere in the end, like 87, early 88.
So it
Then
was very brief.
about 2 years. Yeah, a
Yeah.
little over 2 years.
Okay. So,
I learned a lot of stuff fairly easy. Like I learned a lot of, Metallica, like Master Puppets, Ride the Lightning songs, stuff like that. Um, a bunch of other any like bar chord, power chord, rocks, metal stuff. Um, Ironically, was still kind of transitioning from like rock to metal, just even though I was just getting into Megadeth and Metallica and Anthrax and stuff. Even though I had friends that were listening to them for a couple of years ahead of time, at first I just didn't like it. So I was getting into that, but I was still listening to some more mainstream rock too. And one of the biggest bands at the time in 1988 was Guns N' Roses. So Paradise City, Sweet Child of Mine, they're all over the radio. They're all over MTV. Um, so I went down to the local music store and I ended up having to order it because I live in a small town, but eventually got the Guns N' Roses tab book for the whole album, Appetite for Destruction. And I sat down and started trying to learn songs. Of course, I wanted to learn Sweet Child of Mine, but I didn't know shit about guitars back then. I had this $60 secondhand store guitar that this gigantic neck on it, and I just could not get my hands to get some of the chord positions or just to reach a lot of stuff. And I could not play the intro to Sweet Child of Mine on that guitar. I just tried and tried and tried for hours. Finally, I had saved up enough money. I went down and I bought a new guitar. It was a low end Ibanez, like
like an
I don't remember
RG.
exactly. It was like $200 at the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, something like that, $200-300, and that had a smaller neck, so I could play a lot more stuff. But I still struggled with Sweet Child of Mine, and one of those things that the more I played, the more I got into trying to learn how to play solos and things like that. And like the harder the stuff I tried to play, obviously the harder it is to play. And there were some things like that song that I could just never get. I knew the notes, just like, I don't know, I got a short pinky or something. I could just never hit it reliably, and it used to drive me nuts. Um, so that was one of those things where I'd be trying to play songs, I'd get frustrated, I'd be like, I'm taking a break, and I had some, neighborhood friends that one played bass and one played drums, and we all got together and formed a band. I'd get all frustrated and want to stop, and so they'd be like, "Oh, let's switch it up. Let's go out, smoke a cigarette or something, come back in, and then hey, can I play your guitar?" I'd be like, "Sure, go ahead." I can't play it. And then one of those things. Pretty soon, I sit down on the drums and I'm start tapping around on the drums. I'm like, "This is fun. This is kind of easy compared to the guitar. This is enjoy this." So that's kind of how that all started. To where pretty soon we spent more time playing each other's instruments, and I don't know, it just seemed logical. Like, why am I struggling to play this instrument I suck at when I like better than my friend is at the one that I just do for fun? So
Yeah.
good. I guess that was my calling. I didn't want to be a drummer because my dad was a drummer, and I wanted to be CC DeVille from Poison or Slash from Guns N' Roses, or
Did you want to jam with your dad? Was like a goal out of it as well?
not at the time. No.
Yeah.
Later on, I did jam with him several years later. But
Do you still play guitar?
I was playing drums, and then he was playing guitar. So
Oh, okay. So it sounds like, yeah, musical chairs was just kind of a very common thing,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's very
So
cool. So your dad played drums. Did he play in
yeah,
bands?
a lot. Yeah. Um, he mostly played in cover bands. They played
Like bar
uh,
bands, cover bands, making
our
money,
bands. Yeah, that
making
was the
booze
main thing.
money.
That was like his Saturday night, second job, extra money kind of thing.
Yep.
Excuse to go get hammered.
Yep.
Um, that type of stuff.
Good
Yeah.
times. Yeah. That's cool. And so he did that, and so you kind of he you would say that that was, yeah, like, seeing guys like Slash and all that, was an influence, but you'd say that early on your dad was probably a good influence of you to essentially start playing music, right?
Um, could have been. I mean, I'm sure that he played since he was in high school, so my whole entire life I have some early memories of being like with my younger siblings at the back like booth in a bar while he was playing in a band on stage, and we had to just like hang out and entertain ourselves in a bar.
So you
Uh,
kind of
we're like
influenced
8 years
yourself
old.
then. You kind of you gathered it. He didn't really influence it. You found it within yourself then, is what you're kind of saying.
I think yeah. I
A
mean, I
little
was
bit.
just around it so much. Music became a part of my life,
Yeah.
but it wasn't. It wasn't that I wanted to do what he did necessarily. Um, but I did. Yeah, like I said, I just was around so much. He had a lot of, a big music collection. So he wasn't around. I'd, put on the headphones and put on um, vinyl, like ever Boston Journey or, something like that, and lay there on the living room floor listening to music in headphones, and it's kind of being wowed by the soundscapes and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we go a little forward in time, just name I you named a couple bands. Name like anywhere 5-10 bands that like really were like hitting it that time, along with like, you mentioned Guns N' Roses, Metallica,
Sure.
Megadeth, and you said a little bit of mainstream stuff too. What were all the bands that were influencing you in your like teenage years before moving on to like a first band or something like that?
Sure, sure. So my dad was really into, say 60s, but mostly 70s rock. So there was lots of, you know, B Brothers and Cream, and like I said, Boston and Journey, and a lot of those types of bands. Then when the 80s came, it was, Genesis, Phil Collins, The Cars, Peter Gabriel, that kind of stuff. Huey Lewis was a big one. Then, like I said, I gravitated kind of from there to Poison and Rat and Twisted Sister and um, White Lion and Striper and all those bands that were just basically whatever was on the radio or whatever was on like MTV when I'd go to my friend's house that had cable and spend the night on Friday night and we'd watch Headbangers Ball. That started getting me more into metal at that point. I was Guns N' Roses. I'm trying to think of who Testament, Overkill, those types of bands had videos. So it was kind of just I lived in a little town in Montana, like literally in a valley in the Rocky Mountains. So style was like 10 years behind. There were people in town in like the mid 80s, still wearing bell bottoms and like still mullets into the mid 90s, like a full decade behind the trends on the coast. So, like to wait a couple of months after The Fly came out before it hit the theater in my town. So we could go sneak in and watch The Fly, that type of stuff. But so yeah, I was really just led by whatever I could get access to, early on.
Well, and see, that's definitely a factor too. I should have even asked that. I didn't know, or I mean, I kind of knew that because you mentioned that before we talked about that. So you're from Montana.
Yeah.
So that's Montana. As much as people would think it's not a musical state, there's actually a lot of music in Montana. A lot of country and things
Oh
like
yeah.
bar bands, things like that. But like
Oh
there's,
yeah.
it's probably still like a lot harder to reach, I guess. It's not as accessible as like somewhere like California, New York, Seattle, wherever. You know what I mean?
Oh
So,
yeah.
I mean, it was still around, but yeah, definitely harder to find new music unless you got the radio or the TV to watch or something, or you can't
Yeah.
just go out and organically find it at a bar or whatever. You're probably seeing the same bands because it's the same. You're in Montana. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely get that. So let's go almost a little forward. So you switched to drums at a teenager. So is that around the time that you start or join like a first like real official band, or what's your first like band, even if it like before like a signed band?
So yeah, my best friend at the time, his name was Doug, and I forget where I met him, like third or fourth grade, something like that. And we ended up moving to the house. It was like almost directly behind him. At that point, we were kind of inseparable because we just hopped over the fence to go to each other's house. So ironically, his stepdad was also a drummer, and also played in local bands, and it was kind of a rival of my dad's in a sense. They were like kind of frenemies because
Oh, that's
were
fucking
two of
great.
the there weren't that many bands in the valley, and yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's great.
But he gravitated towards playing the drums initially, kind of like being inspired by his stepdad, and so it worked out great because um, between the two of them, we had access to um, play on their stuff sometimes, and it's kind of like like I said, what led me to want to play guitar, do something different, to do something. It's like how the drummers in the back, sure, I'm in these back there twirling sticks and stuff, but you know, it's the guys in the front getting all the attention. That's what I wanted to do. So, so it's perfect. Like he played drums, I was trying to play guitar. I had another friend in school that lived, mile away or something, and he started playing the bass for whatever reason I don't remember. And there's another guy on the other side of town that moved into town from Colorado or some other state, like kind of a bigger city. Um, he played guitar, and oh yeah, we got together, started forming this group at about probably like when I was like 12. Granted, these guys were all older than I was too. Like my best friend was 3 years older than I was. Um, the bass player Steve was probably 2 years older or something like that. So we're a little further along probably in there than I was, but that's kind of how that I was in a terrible local band at 12 years old. I don't know where we came up with the. Actually, I do know one of them. The other guys was a comic, really into comics, and somehow we came up with oh, the definition is something like a mistake that leads to a hero's downfall, or like a personality. What do you call it? Great.
Oh.
Anyway, a tragic flaw is what is the phrase, right? Like, what's a tragic flaw? A tragic flaw. This came from this guy he read it in a comic book somewhere. It was like one of the superheroes' tragic flaw was that he had an Achilles heel, and so the bad guy, blah blah blah. Yeah, that's a cool name. Yeah, we'll call ourselves Tragic Flaw. And so that's what I did for those couple of years playing guitar, and then even after that, till I was almost 15. I played with those guys in either my garage or their garage or the other guy's garage or in somebody's living room, and we are trying to write songs that sounded like Thrax, and played talent shows at our schools and stuff like that. You know, there's no video anymore, but probably a good thing.
That's always sad. Do you know how many videos we all missed out on that we've probably all had as kids making music or whatever? Yeah, no, those are always good to have.
I
No,
still
but
have some
so
cassettes. I don't know if they're any good anymore. I haven't had a cassette player in like 20 years, but at some point I need to see if those cassettes are, if there's anything still on them.
yeah, that would be
It'd be
cool.
amusing
Just
to
yeah, just to check out. You know, it's good. It's good. It's good to go back to your roots. What like I still remember the very first thing I ever wrote on a drum set. So it's good. It's good to go back
nice.
to that kind of stuff. Keeps you grounded, I guess, or whatever. So I mean, yeah. So your first band was officially that your guitar band at a really really young age. So then,
Yeah.
okay. So before we move on to like next bands, like, so are you like me in the sense of like you ended up being a drummer, like where I am. Um, I've drummed for half the bands around this town. Like I've drummed for everyone comes. Mike, he plays drum. Oh, can we get him to play? Like
Right.
drummers are hard to find. So, have you drummed in a million bands, or have you only drummed in a handful of bands?
Kind of ironically, only a handful.
Okay,
Uh,
okay. So then you could count them on one or two hands.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Um,
okay,
part of
so
that.
there was that band. Let's just go through the
Uh,
list then. What's the very next band then? Is it the next band a drum band?
so the next band is a drum band. Yeah.
Okay.
So I moved to Bay Area, California, in like the fall of '91, and sometime in early '92, I met some guys at school. I moved mid-year from. I mean, I moved during the summer from before my freshman year. Started going to freshman year at one school, and then moved mid-year, finished the other half at another school. Um, Met some guys there, and guitar players. A guy that was wanted to be a singer, and we started getting together and hanging out, and I mean occasionally in one, like my main kind of new best friends. um he lived in they're like condos, but it's like a community housing community, and they had like a rec room thing with a pool and a workout room and all that stuff, and so you could reserve it certain days, weekends, whatever. So we would start reserving it. It was only like once a month, maybe twice a month that we could get the opportunity to get in there. We jammed in the community, rec room on a Saturday afternoon type of thing. That really didn't go very far. It didn't get very serious. I ended up moving again at the end of the school year.
Probably had like
But
3.5 songs, 5.5 songs, right?
I don't even know if we had really had any completed songs or not, to be honest. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
mostly just playing covers. As much as the first band really focused more on original stuff, the next one, we really just focused on cover songs. So after bouncing around a little bit, I ended up beginning of my sophomore year in Millbrae, California, on the San Francisco Peninsula, and even though I was a sophomore, they wanted me to go to freshman orientation because that's a new school and everything else, and that's why I ran into Mike Gilbert,
Okay.
amongst a few other people, and it took a couple months probably before we ended up in the same orbit and then hanging out and then jamming. But first time we did get together and jam was kind of one of those things that I already knew by that point in my like musical career. I played with people that I clicked with, immediately. People that it took a little while to get used to them, and then you kind of click. And I also played with people that like just didn't matter how many times we jammed, we were never on the same page. Mike and I like got together and immediately it was like, oh, what do you want to play? I don't know. What do you want to play? I don't know what you want to play. I don't know what do you want to play. Finally picked a song and it was just like we're locked in. Oh shit. We're both like, yeah, okay. What do you want to play next? Other song. Played that one. This is like, Megadeth and Metallica stuff, but the next one. And it was just like instant, locked in, synced, like only probably musicians and a few other people that work in collaborative brainstorming type of stuff ever experienced, but it's that collective mind thing where you get in the zone where like what they're going to do before they do it. You don't even have to be able to see them, but you just know, you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the kind of connection we had from the very beginning. So since then, only for the most part, except for a few side projects, were with Mike. We had a couple of different, iterations of a high school jam band and covers and stuff. And then later on, we got together with another friend, Paul, who played in Vulgar Pigeons and Binum and did bass. And then we started a band called Where in the end of '94. We did that till, and for the most part, pretty steadily until the beginning of '99, end of '98. Then was kind of fizzling. Paul moved to Santa Rosa, and point he started another band. And then Murray, the bass player, Jedi Grind, he had a band with our friend Tom. Tom moved to Hawaii, so we were all kind of in the same circles and knew each other, and kind of paraphrasing, but ended up talking to Mike. Mike joined their band, started jamming with them, and was a couple months later where they wanted to take things up a notch, and they had a drummer. He's a cool dude, great thrash drummer, but they wanted to play more death metal and blast beats. I wasn't really into it, and so kind of one of those happen chance things where we were jamming in the same building in the hall from each other, and sometimes I'd hang out. And it was one day he was like late practice, wasn't going to make it to practice kind of thing, and they're like, hey, want to jam? Oh,
They were happy about that. They were like, dude, get over here. I know, trust me, I've been in that situation. I get it. In that same situation where they, and it's nothing against them. It's just sometimes some people are a better fit for goals that people have with a band, you know. So I get it.
Oh yeah.
That's I mean that's a band that I'm in right now, you know. It's same deal where it's like the drummer had left because you know, like COVID and family and all this stuff, you know, but then they were like they wanted to keep going with the band. They're like we want to keep going, but then we want to take it up a notch. So they were like we want you, and then I joined, and so like, you know, I get that. So that's awesome
Yeah.
that you and Mike's always had that like locked in connection, you know, musically. I anybody around that's listening that plays music with other people knows that's what that's like, or I mean hopefully knows what that like, because when you have that with musicians,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing, you know. And I can say I've been in a lot of bands, and I've experienced that with lots of musicians, from guitar players, bass players, steel guitar players, like from all sorts
Oh
of
yeah.
musicians, vocalists, you know. So it's a beautiful thing. That's really great that you guys have that, you know. So
Yeah, it's a very unique feeling. The first time that had ever happened with me um was like 92. I had already moved down here. My dad was jamming with some guys, and we had this like little office warehouse combo thing. It was like it was an office and then a warehouse space, and like living in it. And he was also jamming in there with his with his buddies. And it was like one Saturday, Sunday afternoon type of thing. They're all there and they're jamming, and took a break, and I asked if I could play play the guy's drum set. It's like, oh, yeah, sure. So I got on there and started playing, messing around, and then it's like, oh, the guitar player, he plugs back in and he starts jamming some chords, and they're like blues groove, like funky bluesy kind of stuff. He started playing, and I was like digging it. We were, you know, grooving, and then pretty soon it's like I had a bass player, and I was jamming with basically everybody except my dad, and that was the first time like I felt like locked in, like in the pocket and in sync. And I don't know, I probably played with them just like jamming, not playing any particular songs, but just one of those long, unending like
free
bluesy
jam, just a free
groove
jam,
jams
improv. Like, yeah,
for
you guys are just
yeah,
riding off each other. You know, someone will do one thing and
yeah.
then pick up. Like, yeah, totally. That's awesome.
I don't, half hour. I don't know. It felt like an hour or something, but we just kept going and going. It was like that was the first time where I like felt like I'd locked in with somebody and been in that type of the pocket in the groove, and I was just like, oh fuck, this is the best thing ever.
It's like
I want to do it more.
it's like it's almost kind of orgasmic without being
Yeah,
a sexual feel. You know what I mean? It's just
right.
because you feel it's so, there is just this feeling that happens that you can't describe, because, and especially because, well, it is physical in the sense if you're playing guitar or drums, like it's definitely physical, because like you're physically playing something, feeling something, and it's like it's doing something mentally though too, where it's just locked in. I don't know, it just does
Getting
something to
that
the body, you know.
dopamine and oxytocin and stuff hitting all at the same time, and you're just like,
Yeah, 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 no, exactly, yeah, it's great, it's great. So okay, so what year did Severed Savior officially like form then? Like,
but when I started jamming with was Christ called Christ Tonight at the time, with Mike and Murray and Mondo. Um, it was in February or so of '99, something around there. I want to say that Mike had started playing with him towards the end of '98, and started jamming with him probably sometime in like February, March, and then Dusty, the original vocalist, was another friend of the band, a guitar player also. Um, but Murray played guitar at the time, and so we had Mike and Murray on guitar. We had Armando on bass. We didn't need another guitar player, but we did need a vocalist, and Dusty had a killer growl. So just kind of like heast around like May or so of '99, and Christ Tonight already had couple, 2 or 3 songs, or at least semi-finished versions of multiple songs. And Mike and Murray were already kind of taking those and tweaking them and deconstructing and rearranging and stuff like that. And once I started playing, then they're like, okay, we can turn the speed up a notch or two, and um, we worked pretty regularly on that until about, when that was now, March or April of 2000, and then we went and recorded the 5-song demo EP, which is the last 5 songs on Forced to Bleed. Then yeah, we put that out and started hitting up all our friends that were in other bands, like, hey, we want to play shows.
Hell yeah.
That's kind of, yeah, went from there. Yeah.
So, how much touring have you guys done? Like, I don't know, have you guys like been all over the world, or you guys just been in certain areas? Like, I don't know how far you guys have branched out, like tour wise.
Um, Unfortunately, we've never been off the continent.
Just here in
Uh,
America, in
just
Canada,
here, U.S. and Canada. Yeah,
Mexico at
we've
all?
been no Mexico, no South America, no. Um,
But at least
we
lots of
started
touring, like little touring. I don't know.
did 2 like full scale 4 or 5 week tours, and then we did a bunch of little like 3 to 5 show mini tours over the years. But in the beginning, it was just local shows. Obviously, like most bands, we were lucky enough to have friends that were in other bands that were getting some success locally or on some small indie labels. And so, like we mentioned, the guys from Benum and Vulgar Pigeons, you know, um, were able to get us onto a couple of shows with them, which then got us exposure, to the bands and promoters. And we just were really hungry. We were out there at every show, flyering, handing out CDs, talking to whoever we could to get in there and get opening, as much as we could. So we played all over the Bay Area, San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, Sacramento, pretty much anywhere and everywhere we could. And luckily there was it was a good time for it. There was a bar in San Francisco that every Tuesday night they had a metal show. It was bar was called the Covered Wagon. The show was called Lucifer's Hammer. So like every week there was a metal show, and it was didn't take too long before we were to play there every month or two. So we just the local area to death as much as we could, and um, eventually got the attention of the guys in Deeds of Flesh, and recruited Jared Deaver, who had been playing with them when he had left, which got us stronger connection um, to the guys that where's I going with that? Eric and Jacoby ran Unique Leader Records, right? So that got us exposure to them. Now Jared's in the band. We're trying to get them to sign us because we wanted to be on Unique Leader. We like Deeds, we like Disgorge, we like all the things that Unique Leader was doing. They're like, well, interested, but I'd like to see you put out a CD, like with somebody else first. At that point, it was like, okay, we got 2 or 3 new songs. We got 5 other songs. We already, like a demo EP. We can do this. So we found some interest from a couple of indie labels, little small indie labels, and the money together, went and recorded those songs. And kind of long story short on that, label we were going to go with fell through at the last second after we already recorded it and everything else, and we had already set up a CD release show date and everything. It was like, well, we've got 2 months, this thing's supposed to be coming out, got to figure out how to make it happen. And I don't know how, but I had talked my roommate at the time into starting a label with me. and we created Disfigured Records and did all the layout and had it pressed. And it was so far behind, we literally drove from San Francisco to LA to pick up the CDs to get back to play the CD release show, have CDs at our CD release show.
Oh
Then
my
I had to start creating
lord.
a distro. So then I was at like every show there was with my little box of CDs, trading with other bands, other labels, and trying to sell, our CDs, and then trading with everybody else to sell their CDs too, so that they would sell our CDs. And like at one point, like, box of like 300 CDs that I carted to every show.
What a
And
hustle.
yeah, yeah, it was. We literally before Forced to Bleed came out, when we were just playing all the shows with the 5-song EP, we would literally like be at that Lucifer's Hammer show at the Covered Wagon. There's a diner like across the street, kind of kitty corner to it, and we would be there, after work Tuesday evening before the show started, and I'd have printed out all the CD inlays, burned all the CDs. We'd be over there cutting out the CD inlays and folding them and stuffing jewel cases and, putting the labels on the CDs. They were handwritten, but eventually I got CD labels and would print those out at work on the color printer. Then we would put the label on the CD and put the CD and, everything jewel case together. So we'd have 120 CDs or whatever to take it to the show and hopefully sell 5 of them. Or first we just gave them away, obviously, but after a while we started asking $5 for them, and
That's
take
a
2 or 3.
grind.
That's all they had. But yeah, yeah, man, grassroots.
That's awesome, dude. That's
Yeah,
dedication.
that was how it got started. Yeah, Forced to Bleed was a fucking grind, getting that out in time and then trying to get it distributed and sending it out, trying to find lists of all the college radio stations in the country, and then hand writing them, like sticking CDs in the mail and mailing them to them and hoping they're going to play it, whatever college they're in Oklahoma or Arizona, or um that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That, it worked. It got the attention of leader. They saw the work ethic, did exactly what they told us to do. We put a CD out within a few months, and they're like, okay, we'll sign you. So then they signed us, put out the second one, which was became Brutality is Law. That one, from the end of November 2001 to August of 2002, just like crazy, and then recorded that. It didn't come out till March of 03. I think it was just the release schedule is why. We worked so hard to get it all recorded and get it mastered and get it to them, and then it didn't come out for like 8 months, like 6 months or something like that after we got it to them. It didn't come out till like March 23rd, March 25th or something in 2003. But that was, meantime, we're waiting for the CD to come out, but we had these 7 or 8 new songs, whatever. So we just played as many shows as we could possibly play, and we're just kept in their ear the whole time, a Unique Leader, because they were starting the Bloodletting North America tours. That's kind of how we originally met. At least for me, that's how I met guys in Deeds of Flesh and Disgorge and stuff, was on the Bloodletting tour that came through San Francisco. So yeah, we just persistently asking them to put us on it. So when they were putting together Bloodletting 4 with Gorgasm and Paemia and Spawn of Possession, they stuck us on it. And then we had to, as we were new and Spawn was new, putting out their first album, Cabinet, we had to take turns opening the tour every night. That was the first time we really got out of the area anywhere significantly far, and we did like 32 shows in 35 days or something like that around the U.S. and Canada. Orgasm, Paemia, and Spawn of Possession. It was
God, I would
a
have
wild
killed to see
adventure.
that. I would have loved to see that, dude. Would have killed to see
Pretty
you guys
interesting.
and Spawn in possession. Like, man. Oh man.
We called them the crazy Swedes. They they liked to party.
Hell yeah.
They were awesome guys, but they ate all our food and point somebody threw up in our food cubby in the middle of the night.
Oh my god.
But we had a we had a bus, kind of. So we've had the most we've toured a lot, but we've had the most interesting experiences. There's only been a couple times where we've left town on a 3 to 5 to 20 show run where we didn't break down multiple times. But so for the bloodletting tour, we were getting a bus. We're like, yeah, first tour on a bus. It was a catch. The bus could only have a maximum of 14 people on it at any time. And it could really only sleep like 8. So, because the 4 bands plus Mike Hamilton from Deeds of Flesh was our tour manager, because there was like 18 of us or 19 of us, something like that, we collectively, Unique Leader rented a crossover SUV type of thing. I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was not big for 5 guys. And this is how it broke down. So most buses have a front lounge, right? And then have a rear lounge. And in the middle, they usually have bunks for everybody to sleep. The bus had a front lounge with, I just looked at the chat, sorry, dirty Swedes. So I had a front lounge, a couple of chairs that rocked, but they weren't lazy boys. They didn't recline. I think there might have like been a bench seat and then a couple of the chairs. They weren't lazy boys. They didn't recline, but that was the front lounge. And then the kitchen, bathroom, bunk area consisted of bunks. And then there was the rear lounge, which decent size, had a bench seat that went all the way around that folded out into like a California king size bed type of thing. So 4 bands, 3 sleeping areas, and we can only have 14 people on the bus at a time. So what we did is we rotated, like drew this all up, drew straws kind of thing. So we figured you're in the back lounge, you get pretty good sleep because you're isolated from everybody else that's still up partying. You got a lot of engine noise, but it's dark. It's a comfortable bed. You're lying down. It's what we considered like the best sleeping area. The next best was the bunks, but you couldn't sleep a whole band on the bunks unless you like doubled up. The bunks weren't big enough for 2 guys. So like 3 people on the bunks, you had 1 or 2 guys on the floor type of thing. You had the front lounge where you could have like 2 guys, sleeping, sitting up in these chairs, except for they rocked the whole time. And then a couple of guys laying down on like the bench seat of the floor. And then there was the follow vehicle. You would have to take turns in. So rotated. Would like for example, you spend the first night in the front lounge, you get so sleep, not much. And then the second night you'd be in the bunk area. So 3 of you would get pretty decent sleep. Then the next night you'd be in the car following the bus all night long on an 800-mile drive trying to sleep in a car. Then the next night you'd be in the rear lounge where you got the best sleep. If there was like 5 of us. So we were all crammed together like this. Nobody wanted to sleep next to Dusty because he snored, and I woke up every night multiple times choking on his hair because it was to his ass. Wake up with Dusty's hair, like not being able to breathe, Dusty's hair in my face. That's what we did for 5 weeks.
Oh my god.
So he'd sleep in the front lounge, and then the middle lounge, and then the car, and then the rear lounge, and then the front lounge, and the middle lounge, and then the car. All around the U.S. and Canada in the winter. So we had a bunch of occasions in Canada. Like there's a couple we played this one like house party show in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in the southeast of the States, and the bus could not get to the place because it was too narrow of like a dirt road. And then we had a couple of shows like that where we would literally have to park the bus like a mile or two away type of thing, and then we would have to take all the gear to the place in the car, then all the people, and it was like a I don't know hour 2 hour process to get everybody in the gear to the show. Then at the end of the night, well, luckily, as bands played, what wasn't backlined was being constantly shuttled back to the bus. So at the end of the night, when the show was over, we didn't have to spend 2 hours doing it. But that happened at one show in Canada, in Quebec. It was so icy and snowy. And the streets are so narrow, and like the downtown area where the club was, you had to kind of like go down into the downtown area. Bus driver was very finicky, and he was like, I can't take the bus down there. He's like, I got to lose control. I'll slide into a parked car or something. We're going to have to shuttle everything to the show. So again, it's park um, several blocks away in like a big parking lot, and then shuttle everything over in the car and carry it up, 3 flights of icy stairs. uh, yeah, there was a lot of good times. I mean, this is common stuff for most of the bands that tour at that size, the size of bands that tour. It's just like
I mean,
you spend the whole time hauling your gear around and upstairs and stuff, and
I hear some horror stories for
yeah.
sure. Like I really want to experience touring, but not for all that. I hear horror story after horror story of like, oh, we had to do this with our gear, or we had to do it just we broke down here and this happened. Like it's just oh man, like the struggles. It's like I don't think people understand what it takes for a band to like get to a town and play and get to the next one. Like it's more than just showing up and playing. You know?
Oh yeah.
So that's
Just glancing at
it's
chat.
wild. Like it's wild.
Rule number one of touring: cardio. Yes. Yeah, and Canada. Everything in Canada was 2 stories. So
Ugh.
yeah,
All venues are two
the
stories in Canada.
the ones we played were yeah. That's the dream, is like to be able to go out in a band that's big enough that you could have a bus with yourself, or maybe just share it with one other band,
Yeah.
and have a merch guy and a tour manager, and maybe somebody that roadies for all the bands, or some, at least a minimal amount of help lugging stuff around. Because yeah, sleeping 5, 6 people, 7 people in a 18-passenger van full of gear, or towing a trailer with, that's it's not, guys that are out there doing that are not in it for the money.
No. Well, that's yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone, people are normally losing money, lots,
Yeah. Oh
especially
yeah.
nowadays with gas at $5 a gallon. Of course.
Oh,
Like how does
even,
anyone
yeah.
tour nowadays?
Imagine now. That's insane.
It's insane. Well, so okay, so what? Like, okay, I don't even know. So like, what are is there any plans with like Severed? Is there plans to be doing more music, playing any shows? Like what's going on in the camp?
It's still fluid, but at the moment we've, collectively, or I guess you'd say kind of decided, committed, that we're gonna start writing. We haven't yet. I'm not sure exactly when we will. It's kind of I'm trying not to push, but figure when everybody's ready, we'll start being like, hey, so yeah, I wrote a riff here. Check it out. Put some drums to it. Or hey, I ordered some drums. We put some riffs to it. That type of thing. It's been a long time coming, and it's kind of, I think letting it happen organically would be the best, you know, probably way to do it. So how long it'll take, I have no idea. It could
The
take,
commitment to do it is a good thing
but
to
the
have, a
commitment,
good goal.
yeah, the commitment to do it is there. Like,
So
gonna write
when was the
at least
last
an
release?
EP.
When was the last song ever released for the band? Like it's been some time, right?
Yeah. Rebel Insurrection came out on Willowtip in November of 2008.
Yeah.
So we're
So
coming up on 14 years. Haven't put out anything longer than we were a band the last time we put something out. But there's been a lot of life in the meantime.
oh yeah, yeah. Life happens for everyone, you know. Like I was gonna share this with you earlier at the beginning of the stream. I never did, so I'll share it now. Like so, how I got introduced to the band was so I joined. I played in a band that I created with some friends, and then we were playing around town, playing with all the bands around town, and then there was this one band that was kind of like more known about. They were like the better like band, everyone's like, ooh, they shred, and they heard about me and they were having like drummer problems. They, like not showing up to practice, shit like that, and they're like, hey, do you want to like hang out and like jam sometime? And I was like, yeah, okay. And so I hung out with them, ended up joining the band, and was jamming with them for years. And so like after joining the band, they like I was listening to bands like Chimera and Lamb of God, a little bit of Dimmu Borgir, Decapitated, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy stuff, but not as heavy as like some of the shit they were listening to. They were, like one guy's favorite band was Balsagoth, like epic symphonic black metal, and then like they were
Right.
also listening to things like Exhumed, Severed Savior, Deeds of Flesh, like lots of really heavy brutal stuff too. A Ghoul, like grindcore, death metal, black metal, very, very more underground. They introduced me to Emperor. I'd never heard Emperor
Right.
before, and so like all at the same time, I heard like all these extreme metal bands. I was like over. I think I still have the burnt CD thing. It was like one of those 50 burnt CDs. I had a ton of CDs burnt of like and like Brutality is Law is the one that introduced me to you guys. And I like
Nice.
yeah, like I remember it was one of the bands that like definitely made me think like of like next level death metal. You know what I mean? It was like, you hear like I don't know. I heard of bands like Dying Fetus, which is extreme for sure, and then like but then I hear bands like, you guys and other bands. I feel like it's like death metal on crack in the sense of like they're like, they're so
Right.
like it almost like it's still like to this day there's a lot of your guys' music almost doesn't even make sense to me because of like I'm very caveman, like I require a lot of repetition and all that, and you guys are like have so many different riffs, so many different parts. It melts my brain and it's fucking amazing, like it's wild. I don't like the writing process for you guys has to be like, I don't know, it just I don't it either you guys just like how I've imagined it, you guys either sit down and work on everything like very meticulously, or else it just flows and happens, which I don't even get.
Right. Excuse me 1 second.
Are you good?
Shoot. Hang on.
Oh, you're
I'm in
good.
a rehearsal studio here, and I got somebody knocking on my door incessantly. You got stuck in Canada a couple times because the airlines broke on it. We had no brakes, or no, the emergency brake locked and wouldn't disengage. And our bus driver was supposed to stop on the way out of um, Edmonton or somewhere like that before we left town, stop at the truck stop and fuel up. He forgot. So about an hour outside of there, we ran out of gas in the middle of the mountains in Canada, halfway between there and Calgary. We were stuck on the side of the road for 36 hours waiting for somebody to be able to find somebody that could come get the bus running. So we sat on the side of the road in Canada, missed one of our shows, and just luckily we were next to the river and we just hung out and we had a lot of snacks. And we just hung out for a day and a half, all day Saturday and Sunday, and till Monday morning when this guy back to work and we could get a hold of him, and he drove an hour or two out to come just running again. And yeah, so more air parts mechanism valves went out on the way into Vegas, and then between Vegas and Albuquerque, we lost a tire, and that took a whole day getting tires. And then we had the wrong size tires. Couldn't get the right. What it was the right size tires were. We couldn't get it in time. It was like $500 for one tire, and we were going to miss the show to get the tire the next day. So we ended up putting these other tires on that were like $250. Turns out they were the wrong tires. They were like a different size. And a couple shows in Texas were probably went the smoothest of all. Then Texas to Louisiana, about 7:30 in the morning, caught on fire because the rear end was overheating from having two different size tires on it, and the vacuum line, the gas was coming in down the tank, sprang a leak and started dripping gasoline on the engine. So we're all sleeping, and the bus pulls over. Wake up to the bus pulling over, and Murray's the first awake. He goes, talks to the bus driver. He comes back. He's like, "Hey, the guy says the generator's smoking." Also, the generator was having problems. The muffler was getting clogged, and it would smoke, and it would sputter, and so we thought the generator muffler was burning or on fire. So we get out. He grabs a gallon of water. Him and I go walking, like wearing shorts, flip flops, and he's got his like wife beater in his hand or whatever, and I'm wearing like shorts and whatever. Walk around to the back of the bus, and we look at the side of the bus where it's like a screen on the side of the engine compartment, and the generator is just humming along fine. Muffler's not glowing red. It's not smoking. We're like, "Oh, the generator's running fine." And then I see something, and we look down, and there's flames coming out from under the fender wells around the tires. And we kind of look at each other, and he looks at the gallon of water, just drops it. It's like, this isn't gonna do anything. And I don't know. We was like, he quickly decided he was going to get on the bus and get everybody off, and I was going to get the gear. And so he started pounding on the back door of the bus, like to get everybody to wake up. He got on from the front, told everybody, "Get up, get up. Bus is on fire." He opened the door for me, got in, and while he was trying to get everybody out of their bunks and off the bus, I started just grabbing gear and just chucking it out of the bus into the weeds off the side of the road. Like, I hope I don't kill this guitar. Like, oh, there goes my tom. There goes my snare. Some cymbals. And yeah, I was just chucking stuff off into the grass. And we eventually got most of the stuff off the bus. We had a couple cabinets on like the driver's side, some boxes of merch that I couldn't get to because the smoke was just like too much. The fire was starting to come through the floor of the bus. And one of my bass drums, they were in cases, but the bass drum that was on the bottom caught on fire. And so I didn't want to throw it out in the weeds because it was on fire. So I just chucked one of the bass drums out there. And at that point, Murray or Mike or somebody was like trying to pull me out of the bus because I was like, often inhaling smoke and trying to like stick my head out the door, get a breath of fresh air, and then go back in and grab something, and then stick my head out the door, breathe, go back in and grab something, kind of gotta get off the bus. So luckily the fire department was like 2 miles away and showed up in like no time. Somebody driving by called the 911 or whatever. I think Murray or Mike they were trying to call, but anyway, they showed up quick. They put it out. We didn't lose the whole bus, but it was not going anywhere at that point.
Yeah, I'm showing the video now that's on YouTube. The ass end looks pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's kind of funny because after like midway through the tour, after all the windows had leaked during the rain, and it's eventually it took a week or two with the floor dried out. But had this wall where the bunk area ended and then the lounge area was. The guy started like drawing things and like tacking them to the wall, taping them to the wall, different stuff. And I think it was Mike had now SS Titanic. He's like, I dubbed this the SS Titanic. And We even had the conversation. I was like, it's hilarious. I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense. Like the Titanic sunk. It sunk out in the ocean. I'm like, this thing's much more likely to like burn up than sink. Like, but you know what? Probably right. This would be the first bus in history to fucking sink on dry land. Like,
A true
yeah.
death metal bus.
Oh yeah, it was a death metal bus for sure.
Oh my god.
Needless to say, it got towed, and we never saw it again. Got a big bill for it in the mail.
Oh my god.
If you ever have to break down anywhere, I say this every time I talk to anybody about this story. If you ever have to break down anywhere, hopefully it's outside of Katy, Texas, because those were the nicest, most hospitable people of like anywhere been stuck on the side of the road. I mean, it helps you have a big bus that's on fire; it gets their attention, but but
it puts out
it's
smoke
so many
signals.
people.
Like, hey,
Yeah,
we're broke down and
Yeah.
we're on fire.
on fire. But so many people stopped. So many people stopped. Are you guys okay? Do you need help? Do you need a ride? One lady stopped and we were like, we could use some water. She's like, well, I own a smoothie shop. Do you guys want smoothies? We're like, sure. So she went to like, like a Jamba Juice type of place, ate a whole bunch of smoothies and brought them back to us. A lot of people offered rides, but then we're like, well, we have, I don't know, there was like 6 of us. We had a band plus merch guy plus driver, 7 of us, and it's all of our gear. And so most people are like, oh yeah, I can't carry all that. One guy stopped with a truck and trailer, like a U-Haul trailer full of tile and stuff. He was like a tile setter, and he had a tile saw and everything in there. And he's like, you guys want, I got a trailer. And we're like, well, let's look at the trailer. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to put everything in your trailer, man. It's full of tools and stuff. Like, I'll go empty it out. I'll come back. Like, oh, you don't have to do that. No, I'll do that. He literally went, emptied his trailer out, and then came back, and we loaded all our gear into the trailer, and then he took us to the nearby hotel. And smoothies, cool for a diabetic, Murray says. Oh man, she was trying. Water would have been nice.
You just gotta get the right smoothie.
Yeah. Fortunately, a couple of guys got some smoke inhalation, and we were out there with, Murray was out there with no shirt on, and it's like 7:30 in the morning, 8, 9 in the morning, but it's hot, and it's July 27th, and you're in Texas. So a couple of them ended up with some like heat stroke type symptoms. Everybody was in rough shape. We went back to I think Mike had found a room, I want to say, and we got ourselves in the gear there and figure out what to do. And they found a rental car place, and we found a U-Haul place and got a truck. Luckily, Gilbert, Mike, he ended up being able to get some family to help out because we didn't have any money. How are we going to rent a car or like rent a truck to get home with all of our gear? So luckily, it worked out where they would like take a card over the phone kind of thing, and we got this big U-Haul truck, the only one they had. It was like way too big, like 26 feet or something stupid like that. But all of our stuff in it, it was like a 10th full. Like stuff was all spread out on the whole truck because it didn't even have enough stuff to stack. That's how big the truck was. But yeah, they piled in a Chevy Traverse type of car, and in a vehicle that would actually do 80 miles an hour. They headed home. They got pulled over on the way home. We're speeding, and we're out in the desert on their knees, a handcuffs type of situation.
Oh my god.
Shoes. Oh yeah, I forgot. Mike, when he jumped out of the bus, that was the thing, is on the side of the road, it was like kind of like a little ditch. It looked like it was dry, and then there was like this field of dead brown weeds. He jumped out of the bus. The bus is like 4 feet. The floor is like 4 feet in the air. So it was actually worked out well for all the gear that I was checking out the door, because it was getting soft landings, because all of that looked like a brown dead field was mud. So unfortunately, when he jumped out of the bus, he landed both feet like past his ankles in mud. I don't know, almost to his knees or whatever in mud, and lost his shoes when he pulled his feet out. But he was out there on the side of the road with no shoes on and muddy legs. He had no shoes the whole rest of the way back because I guess that was like his one pair of shoes that he had left that didn't stay on the bus.
Oh my
That's the thing; they
god.
didn't have time to like grab anything. They
Totally.
just
No,
got off
I
the bus.
fire there's no time when there's
Yeah.
fire. It happens like that. I know.
So yeah, it was super fun. But they like I said, they got home relatively quickly. I ended up driving the U-Haul back with our driver. The U-Haul wouldn't go over 55 or 60 miles an hour. It had a governor. Um, AC blew out more hot air than cold air, and I was so spent that I was like, "Fuck it, I'm not gonna stress. I'm not gonna rush." I drove to uh, an hour outside of Albuquerque. My dad lived in this little town called Grants at the time. Spent the night with him and my stepmom, our animal farm. And then we drove the next day all the way to Las Vegas and stayed there with my aunt for like 2 days. Just hung out at my aunt's house in Las Vegas. Ironically, this drummer guy, he had a friend that was a drum tech for the Blue Man Group. So I got to go down to the Strip and go to the Blue Man Group theater. I didn't get to meet any of them because it was their day off. I got to like tour the set and like go up on the stage, up like in the catwalks where the drums and everything are, and
Oh wow.
see all their stuff and some drumsticks. Nobody was there to sign them, but I got some drumsticks and like old drum heads because they changed the heads like weekly. Um, yeah, we unwound a little bit in Vegas for a couple days and then drove the rest of the way back to San Francisco. It's we threw all the stuff in the rehearsal studio and then we all took about a month off.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Fuck.
So that's the long, very long and short of it because there was a lot of it was an interesting trip.
That's fine. That's traumatizing.
Dude,
You know,
yeah.
like I mean, like yeah, like fire is. My dad was living in an RV and his RV caught on fire, and so he lost his RV and all that. That shit happens like that. So that's
RVs are like by twos and and they go up so fast. They're
oh
like
yeah.
made to burn. It's like who builds
Yeah,
these things?
yeah, no, yeah, yeah, literally, it's kindling or what everything's it just goes up. So yeah, that had been wild. Like, yeah, that's crazy. But thank fuck everyone got out good and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Luckily there was no
Serious damage.
gear.
Yeah,
Some shirts got wet, some
all gear was
CDs got
good.
wet. The I think Mike's back box, which had weighed like 110 pounds. Oh, it weighed more than that because the fucking cabinet was like 110 pounds. The Ingle cabinet or Mesa cabinet, whatever it was. Later, I forget what he had at that time. Couple of the cabinets and his rack box with his processor, EQ, all that stuff, and then a couple of boxes of merch. Couldn't get them off because they were too far in. They were behind my drums and other stuff, and with the fire was just burning through the floor of the bus so quickly. But luckily, the fire department got it out quick enough that, and it didn't get too waterlogged. Where pretty much Murray's bass cabinet, bass head, his bass head was pouring water out of it. Yeah,
Oh, that sucks.
it worked though. It didn't kill it. Of course, it also had like a month to dry out before it ever got turned back on too. So,
Huh. Wild. Wild. Wow.
yeah. But as Mike mentioned, talking about some of the shows, there were some highlights. Obviously, we played for the largest crowds we'd ever played. We got to open for Cannibal Corpse every night.
Fuck yeah. That's
Unlike
incredible.
tour where we might have played for 40 to 150 people, there was no shows I don't think were not sold out. Like every show was at least 400 to 600 people to
More.
the biggest one was maybe like 11, 1,500 or something like that. Um, so there was a lot of great stuff. I mean, we got to hang out with the guys in Black Dahlia Murder every day,
That's so cool.
and the Cannibal Corpse guys, and all of the stoners and all the bands were on our bus all the time smoking. So
Oh, that's
um,
great.
had the most space. I mean, Cannibal had their own bus, but they couldn't smoke on the bus. Right? It's rented.
Yeah. I mean,
So
when you own the bus, yeah.
right, yeah. So there was a lot of fun. Like I really did talk about the breakdowns of the bus and so much weed. Yeah, I don't smoke weed. I'd quit before that. Um,
So what's it, Murray and Mike? Then they're the stoners.
Everybody but me, I think. Yeah,
Everyone,
basically.
but yeah, 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 yeah.
And oh, he did smoke on their bus. Well, I guess
Smoked
yeah,
with Paul.
Paul.
Nice.
But
Paul.
yeah, it was one of those things where it was challenging for me not to get contact highs. Sometimes I had to hang out elsewhere because the bus was too smoky. But it was like I said, there was a lot of good stuff. Obviously, touring with Cannibals amazing. They're the kind of grandfathers or fathers or whatever you want to call them of metal in a sense, and get out there and get pointers from them and see the other bands and really figure out how to to operate. You have to have a processes and procedures that are efficient to set up and tear down and do things quickly. And we learned a lot of. I personally, at least, learned a lot of lessons on that tour. Um, and everybody on it was super cool. So big crowds, lots of energy, super cool guys.
Okay, I got a
Uh,
question then. I got a
Instead of
question.
Putrefact, what do you call it? Necrophagist album came out that year, so
Oh,
spent a lot of
dude.
time listening to that on that tour.
I love that band. I love that band.
Everybody would be stoned and just like sitting around, like staring at each other, like, man.
Pee bottles. Everyone pee bottles. Lots of pee bottles.
Well, oh well, yeah, we never finished the bathroom. We had the room, but it didn't have plumbing, didn't have working plumbing. So what happened is the
Don't you
room
just
got
need a
full of
hole in the
gallon
floor?
jugs. Right? Yeah, I mean, that would have been an option too. Instead, there was just a lot of like gallon water jugs and Mountain Dew bottles and stuff like that all over the place in there. People that had to go in the middle of the night, and normally in any other vehicle you got to pull over, but I mean, a lot of guys in vans find ways to use bottles too. It's just a lot less enjoyable when you're like sitting down in a van, but when you're able to stand up in a room and lean against the wall and have a little bit of privacy, it's much better.
Yeah. So is that your biggest tip then with touring? Is make sure to have plenty of pee bottles?
uh
No. So that's no.
no.
That is a question that I want to ask you. As someone you've toured, I've never toured with anyone. I've never been on tour. I've only watched it online. I've only talked with people about it, heard experience. I've heard all the horror stories. I've heard all the great stories, the party stories, everything, And so
Right.
I've thought about how I'd want to approach this situation and that situation and this and that, and I'm not much of a partier in the sense of I'm not like a drinker or anything like yeah, I get stoned, but it's like as much as you're getting stoned, like that's not you're not getting wild, so
Right.
you're just kind of hanging out. So like for me, I just want to if I ever get to tour, I want to be very professional in the sense of like I just want to get in, do my job the best I can, and get out and get to the next. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mingle, meet people and all that, network, all that. Definitely want to do that, but I mean, get in, do the job right, and get out. And so with that being said, of like, I want to definitely approach music and touring and all that as like a professional and all that. What is like some advice you could give me or like the chat, anyone that that like aspires to tour someday? You know, what's like some tips, some go tos, you know, things like that. You know.
Um, on the on the funny and ironic side, Mike had a good advice of make sure your gas powered electric generator mounted to the outside roof has a proper gas line, not plastic tube. That's the main lesson of that tour. Um, don't start your own bus on fire.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Rule number one: don't start a fire hazard. Got it.
yeah, yeah. Set up and break down in a timely fashion. Always,
I
absolutely.
so Mike, it's great. It's great he picks that up or brings that up. So as like a drummer, like I've always been that way of like, you know, like as soon as we're done playing, I am ripping my gear off stage. Actually, quick story real quick, for the last show I played, we got done playing, it was a couple weeks ago. We got done playing, and I normally try to move all my gear myself, maybe let my band, and the somebody was helping me. Other people were they're like, "Oh, here, I'll help you." I was like, "Okay." So I started handing them my gear, and what ends up happening, one of my stands with two of my cymbals fell over, and now they're fucked up, you know. So that's the beauty of fucking, you know, having
Yeah.
other people, you know, blah blah. But I digress. But
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even count how many times I've had good-hearted people try to help me and just completely tweak my rack trying to get it on or off stage. It's worse going on because then you still have to play the damn thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have really no time to fix it. You know, at least when it's on the way off, to some extent, depending on the show. On those early tours, like the Cannibal tour, everything got broken down into a box with wheels. So you got fully broken down every day, fully put together every day. And got lucky later, like when we went out in 2012, we had our own van, our own trailer. We opted, it's like, you know, uh, through experience, like don't get the smallest possible trailer you can get just to save money because it's going to be too small, not rated to hold all the weight of your gear and your merch, and you're going to blow out tires all the time. Not that we learned that the hard way or anything. Get a bigger trailer, get a dual axle trailer, have more space for everything, not be overloading it. Luckily, on that one, I had a room to where I didn't have to break all my stuff all the way down. I just took the arms of my rack and like kind of folded them in, took the legs and kind of folded everything in a little bit and just set it in behind everything else and like bunged it so to kind of hold the gear from moving around. That was great. But if you got to break it down for space, something I should have done, practice doing that ahead of time. Get good at setting up and tearing down. When like spend months and months in a studio before you go out and play shows or tour. You don't do it very often. Forget how long it takes. That was the biggest thing I had to get good at on that tour was setting up in a limited amount of time and then getting not just off the stage, but I had to have it broken
Break
down in the
down.
boxes and out of the venue in like 10 minutes after the show. That was one of the things, like, you know, being the opening band, like you got to get your stuff out of the way.
Yeah, yeah.
They were pretty strict. Cannibals of the Machine, Black Dahlia Murder was still young, but they were already a machine. Um, had had those processes, and so that was something that I had to work on and get good at. Was the setting up and tearing down. And yeah, absolutely, setting up, giving yourself extra time to set up instead of just waiting till the band before you starts. If there's space, if you can find space, and then yeah, like you said, you're taking it all off yourself or finding somebody in the band, or if you got the space, probably not going to make any money anyway. So if you can wrangle somebody to come out there with you on the road and you have the space for an extra human to help you sell merch or help you load the gear in and out, it is really nice because there's inevitably in a lot of bands, um, we've had more than one member in the past that miraculously would disappear 20 minutes before load in or right before loadout, and vocalists are always chastised for carrying anything but a microphone. Sometimes you get lucky and you get one that helps. Sometimes you don't.
I've had both. I've had both.
Yeah. So if you can somehow save up a little extra money and wrangle a friend that's not going to just get drunk and get in trouble and get kicked out of the club the whole tour, that to sell merch and help you, then that's great. If they like the party, if they've super young and no experience, you may be wary about them not spending more time partying than doing their job. Especially if you're not
Yeah.
paying them, because there's no formality of like, hey, you've got a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if I get the opportunity to go out, again, it's definitely streamlining my kit and making it as working on that setup and tear down. And I keep forgetting, that's why I keep going. Warming up and stretching. As the older you get, more absolutely necessary it is. I wish I had done that more in the earlier years. Last time that we did tour in 2012, I actually tried to get into shape before the tour, and I tried not to eat fast food 3 times a day for the whole month. Even though you inevitably end up at Denny's almost every other day anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because Denny's and truck stop food is the stuff that's available and that you can afford. But getting in shape ahead of time, trying to eat somewhat clean, and then taking extra time to warm up and stretch out, it's such a difference. Like I literally would go. When we went on that tour, we were headlining the tour package. It's a little tour. We were headlining it. So it afforded me the ability. If you're in the middle of the lineup, it's tough. Opening bands and closing bands, you get the most time probably. I would literally start warming up, like, then I would stretch, and then I would go out and sometimes run around the block, or sometimes there was a couple times, like we were somewhere in Kansas. I got out in this neighborhood and like the pitch black somewhere, and I almost got lost. I went for like a half-hour jog to warm up for the set. But I had a great set because, like I said, I'd warmed up some, I'd stretched. I went for like a half-hour run. I came back, I was all limbered and warm, and I stretched a little bit more, and then I just stayed warm. And I had a great set. It was fantastic. Don't get lost in rural Kansas, um,
Okay, don't get lost in
especially if
Kansas.
you're especially if you're at a venue that's like in a rough area of town. Maybe don't go too far away. But
Okay, so anywhere in Kansas, got it.
well, I mean, Kansas is great. I'm just saying, like, there's a couple of cities you might, if you play in, like, I don't know, Detroit or some, like, there's been a couple clubs in Texas that's had some crazy shit happen at. So sometimes you never know. that's that's for me becoming an old, getting in shape and trying to eat better and warming up, stretching, all that stuff helps a lot.
I've definitely already been there. I've been there for the last couple of years, or at least trying to focus on it. You know what I mean? Or maybe not 1,000,000%, but it's definitely, you know, I'm conscious of it and I try to make an effort of it. And that's what's important, as long as you're making an effort, trying to be healthy, trying to stretch and all that stuff, that's going to make
Yeah,
you feel better when you're drumming and for a show or whatever.
yeah. The known for a long time that beer and a good performance don't really go hand in hand for me.
I don't think it does for
um,
a lot of people. I mean, there
yeah,
are some people and they pull it off. They're able to get drunk as shit and they still shred. Whether they're playing guitar, drums, whatever. But
yeah.
like, it's not for everyone.
No, yeah. The 3 beers and then go on stage. It's not so much my playing isn't there. It's just so much harder.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, I want to relax, you know. Uh, but yeah, like I'd even get to the point where just like if I did have a couple beers, I'd have it like 1 or 2 beers first thing, like 7, 8 o'clock type of sit, and then stop drinking until we went on at 11 or 12 or whenever the heck it was because we ran late every night. But I needed at least a couple hours to Gatorade and then go exercise
yeah.
because I started to notice like I would actually I could feel the difference between like a sober show and a show where I had a couple of beers before I went on. Feel the difference and just I don't know, control and like precision and stuff like that.
Oh, I'm sure. big time.
There are those people that age has a lot to do with it too. You know, the younger you are, the more you can like get away with.
Yeah, definitely,
Faster your metabolism's running, that type of stuff.
definitely.
Looking at what's in 5 hours in chat.
What's in
Take
five
tomorrow
hours,
off.
chat?
I'm talking too long. I don't know.
Probably that you play better drunk. I play better stone, so no, I don't. So do you have any like
Listening to the
specific?
white Morgan Freeman. What the hell?
Oh, that's you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
That's you.
Uh,
You're the white
so
Morgan
soothing.
Freeman.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Um. So do you like for like warm up stretches and all that? So like when it comes to warm ups, is there anything like particular that you do for warming up? Like, do you have like a routine? Do you have like what do you do for your warm up drum wise?
um, right now, sorry, I love you too, Mike. Um, um, now, when I'm going to stream, I plan on playing, harder stuff, death metal. And given the time, I try to warm up because, just, it's just so much easier on me to do that way. But I'll usually I just like I'm on. There's 2 floors here, and I'm on the ground floor. Bathroom's upstairs. Obviously, before I stream, I'm gonna go like use the bathroom. I usually just will walk up and down the stairs anywhere from like 5 to 10 times. And while I'm walking up and down the stairs, it probably looks crazy to anybody else that sees me, but I usually do like shoulder warm ups. Like you do start with big, slow circles, backwards and forwards, and other arm, and just trying to loosen up my lats, my traps, my shoulders, and all that stuff while I'm walking up and down the stairs. And
So you
wrists, the
you literally
fingers,
just focus on warming up, not even on the kit. You just focus on warming up your body. You stretch and warm it up before even
warm up.
sitting down on the kit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I do that pretty much, to some extent every stream, and then sometimes after that I'll come and sit. I'll stretch my quads, my hamstrings, my calves, my hip flexors because I have stupid tense hip flexors all the time. If I don't, then my lower back hurts. So I'll like into like not a yoga position, but like a cross-legged sitting type of position and stretch. I have to be careful because I can space out and spend like 20 minutes stretching. It's like all of a sudden 20, 30 minutes have gone by. I'm like, I'm all stretched out and I'm feeling great, but I'm like, holy shit. Then yeah, then I just sit down on the kit and given the time, take at least 5 or 10 minutes and just do some um, single stroke rolls and some full bass and it doesn't happen very often because I'm usually running so late that I want to get the stream started. Um, because it's already an hour after I thought I was going to start. But
Know the feeling. All too well.
that's somewhere in between before and after fighting with all my gear to get it working. Because then inevitably one day one camera doesn't work, the next day the audio doesn't work, the next day a different camera won't work, and every day it's like some days nothing's working, and you spend like half an hour getting it working. I don't know what the deal is with my computer, but I think it's that it's all bubble gummed and duct taped together. Trying to, I'm trying to create a nicer production than I really have the stuff to do. So I'm probably over stressing it and under budgeted on my cords and hardware. But
Probably.
uh
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, then like I said, I like to, warm up physically and then warm up on the kit, hopefully if I can. Or if not, then I just start off with some easy songs and work my way up into the tempos and this, severity, which not everybody likes on the stream. Sometimes they're like, play some Severed, and I'm like, I'm about a half hour to an hour away from being warm enough for that. But in the
Totally.
meantime, let's play some Anthrax.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I feel it. Well, like so,
So I get there.
like take streaming aside, like even like
Mhm.
think about either if like before streaming or whatever. Like so, like do you enjoy sitting down with like just a click and just practicing to a click? Like, did you ever enjoy doing that, or do you enjoy doing that ever?
No.
No.
I've tried off and on over the years, but yeah, it's hard for me to just play to a click. That's the exception of maybe like being on tour where that was essentially necessary, I guess. It's like go find a corner somewhere in your room, dressing room type of place, or off in the back corner of the club, or somewhere outside in the alley or whatever, somewhere you can sit down relatively undisturbed. Then, with a metronome, I didn't have something I could listen to, so I just had a metronome and I just like watch the light flash, just do single strokes and double bass and start off it, and then pick up the pace. Or I don't know, I just get so bored so quickly with that. A lot of times I will just try to play along with whoever's on stage. If I'm not the opening band and there's other bands before my band, then I'll sit there and I'll just tap along to whoever's on stage, especially if you're on a tour, you're hearing the same songs every night for 20, 30 shows. So you start to get to know their material.